Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today's build is an updated version of the Druid Werebear that's dual wielding the Undisputed axes. Now the reason for this update is the previous build that I did on it from last patch got hotfixed because what happened was they introduced mana back on totems when they died, and it didn't matter whether they were procced for free or not, and that allowed you to run some of the most unorganized gear on the Druid Werebear, so you could just maximize total offense and not even worry about trying to get crit chance or trying to work mana sustain into it, and it allowed you to have 100% uptime without really having to think about anything. So once that was removed, a lot of people thought that Werebear, had been interrupted and you could no longer have 100% uptime. However, there's still a few ways to do it, but doing it while wearing Undisputed axes is a lot tougher, and the reason for that is because when you wear the Undisputed axes, you do not get any increased base crit chance, so you only have 5% base crit chance of all your melee attacks. And why that's a big deal is because 1, you can only use swipe, and 2, to get to 100% crit chance with it, you would need 1900% increased critical strike chance, which is just about impossible to get. You would have to get a tier 7 affix on almost every item of critical strike chance or spell damage converted to it in order to get that. So theoretically it is possible, but we're not going to run exalted items because the odds of you getting that build down would take a really long time. However, it is still possible to get 100% uptime even without 100% crit. You still want to have really high crit, but you can run the tree a couple of different ways to still be able to run this build 100% uptime, and that's what we'll cover today. So let's go ahead and get into the skills. For skills, I'm running Entangling Roots, Werebear Form, Swipe, Ice Thorns, and Summon Thorn Totem. For Entangling Roots, we got some points in Nourish for the healing per second. That's to help unlock the Bountiful Harvest, and that's to unlock the Mana Bloom so that we can get 1 mana back each second from each patch that we stand in while they're active, and this is a huge thing for your mana sustain. Then we have 1 point in Roots of Lap, and this is so that we have more than 1 patch. This will give you 3 Entangling Roots patches. It's actually, I think, bugged. It actually gives you like 4 or 5, even up to 6 sometimes. It's kind of random, which means that if you're in all patches at the same time, which you can't really do that, they don't overlap a whole lot, but they overlap enough that you can be in 2 or 3 or even 4 at the same time. It's going to give you 2, 3, or 4 mana per second, which is a huge amount of mana back, especially when this skill doesn't actually cost 23 mana. It costs nothing because you're proccing it with the skill War, which only costs you 4 mana while in Werebear Form. Then we also have some points in Imbued Sap for the increased damage. This affects us as well as allies, so you'll get 90% more damage. The Groove Master, the extra area is important because it allows the patches to overlap more, so you're more likely to stand in more than 1 at a time. And then we went up to the top so that we could get some points in the Lasting Briar, so the duration would be longer, which means that for the 4 mana cost of the skill, that you're going to be able to get mana the entire time, and you'll actually be able to throw out more patches while these ones are still active, which will double your mana gain for a very short amount of time, as well as the healing. The 90% increased damage, however, does not stack, but the healing does, and so does the mana. For Werebear Form, the reason we went with 2 extra points is because you will need every last one of them that's in this tree, unless you plan on charging less. That's about the only way to cancel it out. We have some points in Ursane Heart to unlock the Wizard Claws and to unlock Star Claw. And what this does is, it means that all the spell damage you have, now this is not adaptive spell damage, this is not flat spell damage, this is increased spell damage. So it's a percentage of spell damage, which you can run on a few items, or you can even get some of it in your passive trees. You can also get it on items, or when you're transformed through affixes on gear. So what we have is, however much spell damage you have now gives you increased melee damage as well as increased critical strike chance. And on this build we have about 500% spell damage while a totem is active and you're transformed. And what that means is that 500% spell damage is actually giving you 500% more melee damage and critical strike chance. So you're turning one affix into a double bonus. So you're double dipping off one affix, which is very important on why you want to stack spell damage in this build. We then have Intimidating War, moving on over to Ironhide, and that's to get the Woodland Bear. You want this because this allows you to cast Entangling Roots every time that you war, and it will add a mana cost, but since we took the points down here in the far left all the way to your Sane Wisdom to give you that 300% mana efficiency, it keeps the cost of war down to just a 4 mana cost. Now that means that for just 4 mana you get to cast not only war, but you also get Entangling Roots with it, which is going to give you that mana back within 1 to 2 seconds. Then we have 4 points in Rip and Tear, so that after you charge, which we also have 2 points in Hightail to reduce the cooldown of it, it's going to allow you to get that increased damage and that increased crit for 4 seconds, and this does stack. So you get that for 4 seconds, but you can actually charge every 2.5 seconds, which means for 1.5 seconds you'll have overlap. You'll have 200% increased damage and crit chance, and then with 1 point in Unnerving Blow, every critical strike that you do with swipe will give your mana back. And with our mana efficiency, we've reduced the cost from 3 down to 2, and it still refunds 3. So when you critically strike, you'll be able to actually generate mana more than it costs you to spend the skill itself. For swipe, we got some points in Way of the Hunt for some hit damage and health leech, and we took the Wingarian Reach for the extra damage and area. Then we started working down the left bottom side for Aspect of the Panther, increased attack speed, points to give us more critical strike chance while the Aspect of the Panther is active, and then 4 points in Apex Predator so that we have 100% more global critical strike multiplier. For Ice Thorns, we have this set up quite a bit differently than I normally do it. So we have 3 points in Dagger Thorns, 2 points in Bramble Armor for this 20% chance to have Ice Thorns cast when hit, and another 4 points below that gives you another 20% chance when hit to have it cast Ice Thorns, which means whenever you get hit, there's a 40% chance that you'll actually have Ice Thorns cast when hit. Then normally I go down all the left side and we put a point into a Nim affiliate, 1 point into Thorn Shield, and then at this point I usually spend my points in both Bulb Shield and Bark Shield to get more armor when we have the shield active and to have a chance for it to recast. However, a 40% chance of a recast on a 40% chance for it to even proc ends up being only a 16% chance of a secondary effect, which means there's only 56% chance every time you're hit of getting a stack of Ice Thorns. However, if we take the right side, since we are running Thorn Totems, we put 3 points in Ritual Briar and then 6 points in Thorn Shaper, which gives you 30% more chance when hit to have Ice Thorns cast, as long as you have 2 totems, which you'll always have totems if you have the idols in this same setup that I do. And that means you actually have a total of a 70% chance of Ice Thorns being procced every time that you get hit, and then we have another 10% inside of the passive tree. So there is an 80% chance every time we get hit that we're going to gain some armor and Ice Thorns will go flying outwards. And then for Summon Thorn Totem, we have this set up to do all the armor shred for us, which is huge. It's going to apply a lot of armor shred, and you proc them often enough and they fire fast enough that you'll actually reduce the armor by quite a bit on any mob, including bosses. We got 3 points in Torrent of Thorns for extra projectiles, 4 points in Force that expands to increase the maximum amount that will be procced, 3 points in Eternal Forest, 1 point in Groove Mine so that they'll all be summoned at once when it's procced, 1 point in Ancient Power to unlock the 2 points in Impale to unlock the 5 points in Shred Armor, so that every projectile that Thorn Totem shoots is going to have a 100% armor shred chance, and then 1 point in Winged Thorns to make them go a little bit further. Alright, for passives in the Primalist base class, I'm going to do these a little bit differently. I'm just going to go over the ones that you need to make sure that you have for the build to work properly, or ones that really benefit the build well. And in the case of this, all you really need is the Harmony of Blades for the dual welding, and then make sure you get the extra spell damage, as that spell damage is both critical strike chance and melee damage. For the Shaman, we put 8 points in, and that was just to get the attunement and the penetration, as that's definitely a good damage boost, and the attunement is mana efficiency as well as more mana and damage. And then for the Druid, some of the main things you just want to make sure that you get is that for the Ice Thorns that have the 80% chance to proc, we have another 10% in the Briar Skin. We also went with the Endurance so that you'll have more. Now remember, if you get to 30% or lower life in Werebear, you'll actually be knocked out of it because we took that mana efficiency node. Now this 10% puts you up to 30% of your maximum health will have the Endurance kick in. So as long as you have some threshold above that, you'll actually get the damage reduction before you get kicked out of Werebear Form. So it'll help you stay in Werebear Form just a little bit more. This also came with a lot of maximum health. And then don't forget we have the Veracity buff. So this is going to help with your critical strike chance and give you some more physical damage as well as a bunch more flat armor. For items and idols, some of the main idols that you want, or at least the ones that I found best in this lot, is you want to have a % chance on hit to summon a Thorn Totem, and you want to have increased spell damage if you have an active totem. And the other kind that you can have can be ones that have a percentage of damage leached as health on hit. If you can also get this with the suffix spell damage, those ones will help you leech more of the life. But you have lots of leech on this even without that, especially with dual Undisputed. You're able to leech a lot of your overkill damage as well. And then for the uniques on the build, we are wearing 2 Undisputeds. You do not have to wear these, but this is what people wanted the build to revolve around and be updated about, and being able to stay in the form while wearing these because they have so much melee physical damage and other benefits such as giving you 500% physical damage when you start hitting targets that have bleed on them. And so for that, we do have 2 of these on, and you can sustain it for 100%, although our critical strike chance is only about 70% when everything is active and going, and you can get 100% uptime of that. As long as you're charging and proccing the totems, you can have about 70% crit at all times. If you want to run 100% crit, in the offhand, we have a crafted, just do a Raider Axe. It'll come with enough critical strike chance base that even without putting that as an affix on it, you'll be able to get to 100% crit. However, to guarantee that you get 100% crit, you can go melee physical damage, melee critical strike chance added base on it as well, and then I put frailty and chill chance on hit. And then for the crafted items, I'm wearing oak armor. This came with some poison resist. We have increased spell damage while transformed, critical strike multiplier while transformed, and then increased health and increased armor. And then for the helm, we went with the horned crow. This was so that we could have that percentage of damage leached as health on hit. And as you can see, we have +2 to Werebear Form. That's the most important. And then increased spell damage while transformed. And the increased health and increased armor are the least important, so tier 1 affixes of those will be just fine. Wearing the Jade Amulet for the melee attack speed. And then we have those on it. Again, all of this is going to be in the build planner, so I'm going to start transitioning my videos not to read all of these off, as you can just go look at it and see it all on the build planner website. I will, however, hover over them right now just so that you can see what we have on all of the items. And then for the boots, we went with that fire resist instead of the Heoborean boots. And we went for the plus endurance. If you get a good enough roll of blessing, you don't have to get the % increased endurance. You can run a different relic if you'd like. And we also have the +2 swipe on the relic. For the character sheet, as you can see, we don't have quite capped resistances on all types, but we do have quite a bit, 60% plus of all types. We have almost 2300 health, a lot of mana thanks to all of the attunement that we have, almost 40 points. And then we're sitting without anything, 35% armor, but this will jump up as you start to get Ice Thorns put on you, as it gives you a bunch of flat amounts. And then for damages, you can see we have 417% spell damage, but that will be increased when we have totems active because we have increased spell damage while there are totems. And then all of that spell damage automatically gives us melee damage, which is why our melee damage is almost at 500%. It's increased because of that spell damage. And then that's also why our critical strike chance is already at 40%, even though we don't have any additional base crit. And then for how I play this build, there are 2 ways to do it. You're going to either have War and autocast, or you're just going to manually cast it when you plan on staying in it. Now, the thing is, if you have bosses and stuff, I like to put charge because it's free. I'll put that on autocast, so it'll always be going. And then I'll put war also in autocast. And what this does is, means you're auto going to charge whenever it's off cooldown, and then you're going to war every time. And as you can see, we still have the previous patches, and we have new patches. And as you can see, my mana stays full. Like, you get your mana back pretty quick, actually, when you're in these patches. So it gives you extra mana. You're actually generating extra mana by having it active. Now, as you can tell, if you leave the patches right after you war, you're going to start losing mana. So, like, if I'm still in a patch there. If I war and then I leave, I'm 1 mana shy. And if you charge out of it, and you're swiping, you're going to start losing mana. So like in Echoes, it's probably not a good idea to leave this on autocast. I would leave charge on autocast because it's free, but for war, I would use that sparingly in the Echoes, or use it whenever you stand spot. But if you do start to get low on mana, you can simply just stay in one spot, like we are here, and start casting it, and you'll actually regenerate mana without actually having to leave Werebear Form. And then of course you just swipe, and that's really all you got to do. And you can see we're critting for about 30k. As you get some armor shred, you might get a little bit higher, but 25 to 35k is about what our crits do. Alright, that's going to be it for this video. We're going to go ahead and give you some more gameplay, and stay safe, travelers.